Theodora and the Witch is based on my grandmother's real-life wicked stepmother.
Really diving into those stories that have dark aspects to them, but put them in the light of truth and get it out there to inspire all people.
The stories of the adventurous saints who traveled all of Russia and kayaked from island to island and translated all these languages and the gospel in all these languages is phenomenal. And that's amazing, and that's a path. And another path is to learn how to love the person right in front of you.
We have a very special program today, Byzanfest. I don't know if you've ever heard of this before. It was established in 2014. Byzanfest screens and streams the very best of Orthodox-inspired cinema. Simon Sianka has worked in documentary film for over 20 years, having filmed all around the world in over 40 countries. Simon has produced long-form and short-form documentary films, having received multiple festival honors and awards for both feature-length and short films. Simon lives in Colorado with his wife and 4 children and serves as a subdeacon at the Holy Theophany Orthodox Church. Our next guest, Angelina Phoenix, is a filmmaker in Tampa Bay, Florida. She studied under the talented guidance of 5-time Emmy Award winner Jonathan Jackson in his poetry program of art and film, Theodora. Angelina's first short film, Inside, won Best Short Film at Byzanfest Film Festival. She believes that through the power of cinema, we should shine light in the darkness of the world. Writer and directress Lily Skirtis is a Greek-American Los Angeles native. Her first feature film, Last Fast Ride, an award-winning documentary about Bay Area singer Marianne Anderson, premiered at Slam Dance Film Festival, aired on PBS, and is currently streaming on Amazon. Skirtis is drawn to dark material featuring female protagonists, as well as the exploration of archetypes, myth, and folklore in storytelling. She holds an MFA in film directing from Columbia University's prestigious School of Arts, New York City, and a bachelor's in classic civilization from UCLA. She is an active member of the Greek Orthodox Church and lives in the LA area with her husband and 2 sons. Simon, let's go to you first. Your film, Sacred Alaska, won Best Feature Film in this year's festival. Sacred Alaska explores how the Christian faith was presented to the native people as the true fulfillment of what they already knew. The documentary shows the stories and the lives of some of the first Russian monks who came from the island monasteries in Balam, Russia, across Siberia, and the treacherous Bering Sea to the Alaskan islands and the mainland. The story is not merely a historical look back, but also explores what we can learn from Alaskan Orthodoxy alive today. It instructs us on being present, on becoming fully human, and how we should care for the island, the animals, and one another.
So Sacred Alaska is a feature-length documentary film, and Silas Carbo, who is my co-filmmaker on this project, the 2 of us traveled up to Alaska multiple times over the course of about 3 years and filmed an Orthodox story up in Alaska. Really about, it started with the history of how Orthodoxy came that direction into the United States through Alaska, through the influence of Orthodox monks coming from Russia, and Saint Herman, Saint Innocent of Alaska, and then some of the other saints. We explore their stories, and really we kind of started the film off with sort of that seed in mind, but then it developed over time, spending more time up there, getting to know people in the villages particularly, and hearing their stories and seeing kind of Orthodoxy in Alaska that is alive today, and kind of the legacy of what the saints started, and then the life of Orthodoxy there today. And our film, even through those experiences, really took on even a whole different shape than we initially anticipated through the discovery process of spending time getting to know the people and their culture and the kind of unique, if you will, sort of life of Orthodoxy that exists in the Alaskan villages.
The internet of those times, I believe, was the kayak, and the monasteries and the missionaries would go from island to island, and then they actually translated, from what I understand, the scriptures into the Aleutian language. Did you experience that?
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating, particularly Saint Innocent and Saint Yakov, who really, yeah, took it upon themselves to, translate different texts, catechal texts, as well as scripture into the different languages, to the, Aleutic language, and then Saint Yakov, who was an Aleut, who then went and actually studied in Russia, came back as a priest, and then he was sent as a native Alaskan to evangelize another people group, the Yupik people, and that he had to learn their language and then translate things into Yupik and communicate the gospel message to this other, tribe. Him being from one tribe, then transferring it over to another. And so we talk a bit about that in his story in our film as well.
And my understanding from the Orthodox Christian faith is that when we go to new areas, when we go to different parts of the world, we baptize the culture there. We don't impose our culture, but we baptize that culture with the beauty of Orthodoxy. Let's talk a minute about Orthodox Christianity for you. Did you learn anything about faith in this community, particularly that surprised you during the filmmaking?
Yeah, for me, to the even just the general approach of documentary filmmaking that I've really enjoyed over the years is, I mean, we went in with, again, some kind of rough framework of what we wanted to do, but a lot of it was really a discovery process. Get to know people, interview them, and learn as we go, and then come back with all this, great content to then be able to, kind of craft into a story. So yeah, we learned a lot, and I'd say particularly, yeah, I mean, just the Orthodox experience up there, the experience of life, and then therefore Orthodox life is just, it's quite unique, and so I mean, two things. Let me maybe just back up for a second, because one of the things you said, as the missionaries came in, part of our Orthodox idea of how to missions and evangelism, how to share the faith, yeah, is to look for those opportunities of what are points where we can build bridges. What are points, what's something that we can take from a culture and maybe launch off of, if you will. And you really see that in the lives of the early saints that missionized and evangelized in Alaska, and they saw this deep spirituality within the native cultures and traditions. Now, obviously, there were some things that needed to go as well, but they started, as Father Michael Alexa, who's featured in our film, told us, he goes, they started with just months of just listening to stories. Like, let's just learn who these people are, and let's hear their stories. And then as they heard their stories, they saw, oh, wow, there are these deep, eternal truths that are true because of Christ, but eternal truths that the cultures already had. They're like, okay, we can work with this. We can now spring off. Now let us tell you about Christ in the context of what you already inherently believe about who we are as human beings, our connection to nature, our connection to God and the spiritual realm, and the kind of unity that can exist there. Will let us share that. Let us share about Christ in that kind of context. And so in very unique ways, all the different saints, were able to kind of do that as they evangelized.
Yeah. Well, my grandfather had I guess a sixth grade education, but he always told me, he said, Chris, he said, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth, which means you need to listen more and talk less. And
Right.
that sounds like what the saints were doing. They would go and they would hear and they would learn, and then they would approach. What do you imagine or hope for both Orthodox and non-Orthodox audiences will be able to take away from this particular documentary experience?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. And, I think to key off of too, just what we were just talking about, our film, what's interesting, it's not merely a historical look back as, okay, here's what the saints did and here's how Orthodoxy came, but it's also, here's the Christian faith in this unique Orthodox native context living itself out in Alaska, and what can we really learn from that today? And I think there's something for both Orthodox and non-Orthodox to be able to, learn from that, today. And particularly, I think it comes through in sort of kind of what we do in the film is we introduce the lives of the historical saints, if you will. We also introduce a modern day saint in Matryoshka Olga, who also recently has been, officially declared, Saint Olga, and is to be canonized in as a saint. And Matryoshka Olga's story is really beautiful in this very kind of modern sense too, of that. Well, what did she do? She lived a simple, humble life of prayer. She took care of people who were abused and hurting, who were suffering, and she would make them tea and listen to their stories and comfort them and love them. And it's like there's a concept that I'm really drawn to of this idea of a hidden life, and very much her life was a hidden life. And what did she do? Well, she lived the gospel. And not in some exotic, elaborate way. Those stories are amazing too. So you have the stories of the adventurous saints who traveled all of Russia and kayaked from island to island and translated all these languages, and the gospel in all these languages is phenomenal. And that's amazing. And that's a path. And another path is to learn how to love the person right in front of you that God has placed there. Where has God placed you? Your neighborhood, your church community, your family, and how can we live the gospel by simply loving those that God has placed in front of us? And I think that's a really I find personally helpful in my own life, and I think in the kind of this modern context too, where there's so much to sort of potentially chase after in life, even very good things that we can chase after, the next job promotion, the next place we want to move to, the adventure we want to go on and do. We need to make sure that we recognize where has God placed us and to love those people around us. And I think that's a big takeaway that is applicable to Orthodox and non-Orthodox alike. And also for the non-Orthodox, that it would just introduce them to our beautiful, multicultural, colored Orthodoxy. And that Alaska, people hear about Russia, people hear about Greece, and some of the other countries, but like, when I tell like friends at a coffee shop that I might go to about, there's these Orthodox Christians in Alaska who they're native Alaskans and they're Orthodox, and they have been for a couple hundred years. People are like, I've never heard of such a thing. And so it's just kind of a fascinating thing to be able to introduce people to.
Very good. Well, thank you, Simon. Angelina, let me come to you next. Your film Inside was the winner for Best Short Film. Inside is the story of a woman who regrets her life decisions and clings unto childhood memories to comfort herself. This social awareness film aims to bring light and remembrance to those who have suffered in the sex work industry. So tell us a little bit about it. Why were you inspired to tell this story?
All right. So Inside is basically a poetic telling of a woman who has found herself involved in the sex industry, and she is reminiscing about her childhood. So it's done without dialogue, only background music, and it's only 4 minutes and 30 seconds long. And I challenged myself to make a project that really packed a punch with like the shortest amount of time spanned on the screen, because I feel like if you can do something without words, then when you add words to something, then it skyrockets. So it was my very first short film that I ever made. I went to film school this time last year up in Tennessee in Theodora with Jonathan Jackson. So when that ended in June of last year, I made this short film with one of the other film students who lives in Florida, Paul Pence, and we just started submitting it to random festivals and started seeing what happened. And up in film school, we always heard about the Byzantine Film Fest. And I was like, oh, I want to make something that I can submit there. So it was like a huge honor to be accepted, first of all, but then to go on and win was just a mind-blowing experience. So.
And then you worked with Jonathan Jackson, of course, whom is a good friend of OCN. We've had him on the program many, many times. He's a truly blessed individual. I believe from what I'm reading about you that you hope to shine light into darkness. So how does a faith perspective that you have inform you of your approach to film, like Inside?
Yeah, so being an Orthodox Christian, I see that as having a light or having the truth. So even if you're presenting things to people that might not be Orthodox or might not be Christian at all, I feel like it's still shining a light and it still can inspire people to change or raise up their eyes to what's going on in this world. About 5 years ago, I started a process of writing a novel about predators on the internet, the dangers of social media, all of that. And it shows young girls who is innocent and 15 years old and her entire downfall into the loss of innocence and the darkness of this world. And it should be released in the next couple of months. Been working with a publishing company and everything. So through doing all that, I've done a lot of research into the mindset of predators online and the darkness and everything around us. So I really want to bring awareness. I'm not, condemning anyone. I just want people to start to think and realize that these are giant issues that are like a taboo topic in our day and age. So
Okay.
that is the inspiration for Inside as well.
And do you prefer short films?
I've only been around short films so far. I would like to one day turn my novel into a full-length feature film, but I'm waiting to get some more practice working with short films or working on other people's projects before I conquer that whole step.
What is your hope for future projects?
One, I would like to get my novel out there more. Its title is going to be Fallen Angel. So turning that into a feature-length film. I would like to turn my grandfather's story, because he grew up as an orphan in Greece, and he has an amazing success story. So I would like to turn that into a big feature film, and then start beginning to take different lives of the saints and put them on screen for more people to see and realize their true beauty and the pain that they've gone through, but the glory in the end. So really diving into those stories that have dark aspects to them, but put them in the light of truth and get it out there to inspire all people.
The other night I was sitting and I was going through Netflix and I was seeing this horror movie, this killing, this assassination, all negative. And I had to literally turn off the TV because I didn't see anything there that was inspirational, something that would lift us up. I honestly saw a lot of darkness, and that worries me. So these types of things where you're shedding light in darkness, I believe, is really what people need today. And thanks for doing that.
Yes. You could use darkness as a tool, not just an end goal, because it only makes the light shine brighter, but you need to have the light in the projects for it to thrive.
And those stories too that lead, they can start in darkness, but they lead towards light. That's a real need in today's world. Anyway, Lily, let me come to you. You were awarded Best Screenplay in Development for your script, Theodora and the Witch. The film is set in Zakynthos, Greece in 1918. After her mother dies, apparently of the flu, 15-year-old aspiring scientist Theodora Agostino grows increasingly eager to solve the mystery. When she finds occult objects in her house, she begins to suspect her stepmother of foul play. Demonic entities pursue Theodora as she follows one clue after the next, while otherworldly beings, including a good witch and an angel, help her persevere. Oh, it sounds scary. All right, Lily, tell us about it.
Yeah, thank you. That theme of the light in the darkness resonates with me so much. That's been a big factor in my work as well. The Theodora and the Witch is based on my grandmother's real life wicked stepmother and the stories that my grandmother would tell me about her. Both of my parents were born in Greece, and they met and married in Detroit, came to LA. So typical immigrant family. Our yaya would stay with us quite often. And so I got to spend a lot of time with her. So she would tell me stories, often about her childhood. She was the oldest of 5 children, and her mother died in the Great Flu pandemic of 1918. That flu hit the parents' generation very hard, like people in their 30s and 40s. So there was this generation of children without parents. And she told me how hard that was. And what was really interesting was her father was set to marry a wonderful woman, kind, who would take care of the children. And this stepmother thwarted that and inserted herself and imposed her will onto this family. One of the ways my grandmother told me was this interaction with black magic. So my grandmother told me that the stepmother made a good luck charm that she called a good luck charm, like how we have a phylacteau that could be a bit of a relic or something that's blessed that we would pin to our clothes. There is a black magic version of that the stepmother gave to my great grandfather, and my grandmother discovered that. She's like, "What is this? This is bizarre." And she learned that was used in black magic. And the most memorable story from my grandmother was she had to do a lot of the caretaking of the house, taking care of her little siblings, laundry, ironing. So one day when she was ironing the clothes, her father's clothes, her stepmother said, "Here you go. Here's the iron." And in those days, the irons were hollow and filled with coals. My grandmother was ironing the clothes, and she knocked over the iron and outspilled the coals along with some strange objects. There was a nail, like an iron nail, and a cutting from a donkey hoof. And she was like, "What is this?" And I think she took it to her grandmother, and her grandmother told her, "Those are used in black magic." So I had these stories in my mind, and growing up and reading folk tales, and then studying Greek religion and magic, ancient Greek religion and magic. Over the years, the story formed in my mind, and it's come out in this screenplay.
Wow, that's got to be a powerful story. Do you deal with the Orthodox perspective on evil or the occult?
Yeah, absolutely. So from what I've come to learn, black magic, Maya, witchcraft, is imposing one's will on someone else. So like in the stepmother story, the love spell. So the stepmother writes a love spell, like to Hecate. So Hecate, bind this person to me so that he may love no one else and only love me. So that's her imposing her will on someone else. And in the ancient world, it was very clear, if I do this ritual, the god or demon will do what I want and will give me what I want. What we have as Orthodox Christians, we know that when Christ came into the world, he freed us from that, the bondage to the ancient gods, to those demons who, when the person would get what they want, then they became indebted to the demon. And instead of that, the dynamic would change. They would get what they want, and then they started to become enslaved to that entity. So when Christ came into the world, he freed us from that. So the Isu Christos Nika, the Jesus Christ conquered, is him providing us freedom of our own will, to not impose our own will, but to follow God's will. So thy will be done is what we've been given, that freedom. So I put that into
Beautiful.
that context.
We all have that greatest gift that God gave us, which is the free will to choose right from wrong. But you're saying here that was the sort of the possession of a person's will to do what they wanted rather than what God allowed them to do. So that's a beautiful thing. You know, all of you folks are tremendously talented. I'm jealous. I'm going to confess to you. I'm jealous of your writing skill and your ability to see what you're doing. So Lily, let me ask you one final question. What made you choose writing as your path? And what's your unique role of the script writer in forming stories for film from your perspective?
So from a very young age, I loved how stories impacted people emotionally. Like I had, you know, my giant illustrated Bible stories, and I had the Grimm's fairy tales, and I had a book of ghost stories. And when I would memorize some of these stories and tell them to my family. And I just loved getting the, like, you know, excitement or the jump. And so I learned how powerful stories were to affect us emotionally. And like in the movies, we can cry, we can laugh together. Um, so, so as I did projects at school, teachers would encourage me with my writing. And from that feedback I got, I was like, oh, okay, maybe I can write. So from there, I studied it. I learned the craft of screenwriting, and I try to think about, like, you know, that emotional connection to the audience, and that's what's most important to me is providing that framework, and through the characters, we figure out what kind of person do we want to be. Do we want to be a force for good in the world, or not good in the world? So I thought that was very powerful for me. So so yeah, I'm very grateful that I've been on this path, and I'm grateful to the teachers who were like, go, keep going.
Keep
So
going, keep going. Well,
yeah.
thank you for that. Just one final, question to pose to each of you briefly. Simon, we'll start with you. What's on the I guess what's on the computer? What's the next project you see happening for you and your work?
Yeah, thank you. Well, right now we're still kind of trying to get Sacred Alaska out, so that's kind of the big thing right now. We're currently inviting people to just kind of very grassroots, but help us host a theatrical screening in your neighborhood with your community. And it's quite quickly has become almost a full-time job of trying to just kind of coordinate that and manage that sort of on my own. And then there's of course some, hopefully some long-term distribution that we still want to figure out, and how do we want to get the film out there long-term so it's available on streaming and for purchase and such things. So and then I do a lot of client documentary work. I did a film a number of years ago called Poverty Inc. And we are currently, with that same team, we're working on another film about poverty, but more of a US based story, where Poverty Inc. was like international. We're doing a US story on poverty. So that's kind of the next year and a half or so. That's a big project that I'm in the middle of.
Sounds great. Angelina, how about you?
For me, it'll be the next 2 months of, picking the fonts and stuff for my book. So I'm excited for that to finally come out. And then it's mostly just building a network of people that I can work with, because I believe, iron sharpens iron. So jumping on other projects, collaborating with people, and then I can always keep myself busy with writing poems and other short form scripts. But it's mostly meeting other people and getting inspiration from others.
Great. Lily, how about you?
So we want to make this script into a film. So we're planning on doing a short proof of concept, and then trying to make the feature film a reality. Yeah, so we'll be going out there with the script and the short proof of concept, and seeing who we can bring together on the team to make the feature.
Sounds great. Thank you all for being with us today. Thank you all very much. God bless your work. Continue.
Thank you. Thank you,
so
Father,
much.
for having us.
Everyone.